Welcome to Work Interrupted Podcast.
Welcome to Work Interrupted with injury and disability attorney Brian Mittman. I'm your host, Tracy Merda, and today we're getting to the bottom of how workers' compensation insurance companies work and what New Yorkers need to know. Why don't we start off, Brian, with telling the listeners about your experience you have working with insurance companies when it comes to workers' comp claims?
I have been dealing with workers' compensation my entire legal career, so almost 30 years now, and we're constantly dealing with insurance companies. I've seen insurance companies come and go. I've seen insurance companies that have been around and will be around. I've seen adjusters and supervisors and professionals and defense attorneys come and go and are around. So I personally have a deep, deep well of knowledge and experience. And the disability guys, Markoff and Mittman, we've been around since 1933. So we have a very long history of knowing what's really going on. What are the insurance companies really thinking? Both the technical everyday stuff and what's their strategy here. And I think it's been so very, very helpful, especially with the advent of AI these days and how that's going to change the insurance industry as well. So that's where we're at.
Well, Brian, how important would you say it is that someone hires an attorney that actually has that insight and that experience versus maybe a general practice attorney or someone with less experience in this arena?
In this particular area, specialization matters, hands down. There's no beating somebody who, has more plate appearances and has gotten out onto the diamond more than a rookie. Nothing wrong with a rookie. And, interestingly enough, even though many things are virtual these days, one of the things that happens is that young attorneys in my office, new attorneys in my office, they do get a little bit more respect because the insurance companies and the defense attorneys know that if they try to pull the wool over their eyes, that you have some experienced attorneys on the back end looking at it saying, what's going on here? But if you're inexperienced or you have an inexperienced attorney, there's a lot of technicalities that could really sink a case. And it could be the difference between tens of thousands of dollars. It could be the difference between getting the medical care that you need. And it's one thing if you don't get a great deal on selling your house. That sucks, right? If your attorney kind of screwed up and there was an easement issue, that sucks. And I'm not belittling that. But we're dealing with that every day here, where in the world of workers' compensation, the ability to get medical care, the ability to pay your rent is impacted by what your attorney says or does. I like to joke, and I used to give lectures, and I would start by talking acronyms. There's a lot of acronyms in workers' compensation. WCB, Workers' Compensation Board, ANCR, Accident Notice Causal Relationships, Average Weekly Wage. There's all these acronyms that we use as shorthand, just like doctors. And I would start my lecture off with a whole conversation between a judge and an attorney without basically using English, right? Yet the meaning of those words was so impactful for the actual case. So it's super important to have somebody with experience.
Why don't you walk me through how workers' compensation insurance providers are reviewing these claims? What are they looking for?
Insurance companies have to follow certain rules that are set out by the workers' compensation law and the workers' compensation board in terms of responding in a certain amount of time, what information they have to provide, what they have to pay based on the evidence that's provided. So the way for them to save money or make sure they're not paying out money they shouldn't be paying out, which could be a legitimate concern, is that they're going to review and have a review process in place. So every case basically starts with somebody gets hurt while they're working. Usually the employer knows about it, then the employer is supposed to report it to the insurance company. That's the trigger. They will then do an investigation, and it's usually a fairly quick investigation. If the ambulance showed up at the job site and the person's on the books and, oh my God, there was a horrific accident and they broke both of their legs, there's not going to be much for the insurance company to do in the beginning, and they're going to look at it and say, oh, this fits all the boxes, A, B, C, and D, and they'll start paying and taking care of it. It gets a little hazier when it's things like the employer calls up and says, well, this guy got hurt, but he wasn't doing what I told him he was supposed to be doing. And then the insurance company starts to look at it and say, what's really going on here? The insurance companies are able to change benefits, that is lower benefit weekly payments, stop weekly payments based upon certain evidence. So what they try to do is they will send you as quickly as possible to an independent medical exam. That doctor will say you're not as bad as your doctor. And then based on that, they'll pay you less money, or they won't pay you any money, or they'll deny treatment. Your doctor has to make requests through a special medical portal. If your doctor does it wrong, they will deny it. I had a situation where for literally, I think it was 3 months recently, client's doctor kept requesting medical care. And it was in the portal and kept requesting medical care and kept getting denied. Client was getting frustrated. The doctor was all pissed off. I took a closer look at it and realized that the doctor was filing the form in the wrong way. While I was on the phone, I said to the administrator, okay, when you press that button, don't press that button, press the other button. She presses the other button and got the approval before I hung up. So these are the things that the insurance companies do in terms of investigating and processing the claims. Then, and people don't realize this, workers' compensation, I've said it in other episodes and other times we've spoken, it's the game of chutes and ladders. You go up and you're almost at the end and you hit a slide and you go all the way back to the beginning and it's round and round and round until you finally get to the end. And one of the things that the insurance companies will do is as your case gets older, right? Because now you've been out of work for, let's say, a year, you're trying to get back to work, but you still need more medical care. They'll start playing games with how much they pay you. They'll start playing games with making you look for work. The insurance companies over the last decade have been very good at convincing the courts that injured workers are required to look for work in all sorts of ways. And if they don't, you can cut their payments off. It's evil. And that's what we're dealing with. When you are found to have a permanent disability, there are ways that they try to limit how much they have to pay you into the future and cut you off. So again, there's all these things that the insurance companies do, dirty tricks and tips that they're trying to do to lower your payments. Some insurance companies or some adjusters, they're very reasonable people. If your evidence is there, they'll negotiate with you really hard, but you'll come out with an agreement that's good. Others, they just do it to do it. There's one defense firm, literally, the defense attorney has said in videos and on her website, we will find ways to enforce the law that are unexpected. And they will dig into regulations and they'll take it all the way up to the highest court to try to make a point and prove, see? And it doesn't help anybody. It's a waste of money and time.
Wow, that's just shocking. So tell me about that relationship between employers and the insurance providers. What is really important? What's going on there and what do we need to know about?
That is a great question. And in fact, that is, I think, one of the least asked and most misunderstood questions out there. Employers and the insurance company are lumped together, right? So the parties in a workers' compensation case are you, the injured worker, and your attorney, the insurance company and employer, and then the workers' comp board, which acts as the court system and the judge. So if we have a dispute with the insurance company or employer, we go to the judge. Here's where the problem begins. The big companies in the world, they have very tight relationships with insurance companies. A company with 30,000 employees has special insurance rules, and they have a lot of involvement with the insurance company about how the cases that come through the system operate. The smaller guys and gals, 90% of the rest of the world, those employers buy an insurance policy through one of their business associations or directly from an insurance company or from a broker. And what will happen is the insurance company, once they get a report of an injury, they'll call up the employer and say, hey, what's going on here? Send us this documentation and this and that. The employer has no idea, right? The employer might say something that could derail your case as an injured worker, or they might be trying to say something that's going to help your case, but actually hurts your case. They want to do the right thing by you, or maybe they don't care about you and they don't want to do the right thing. So those employers aren't really making any of the day-to-day decisions that the insurance company is going to make. So that leads to a lot of really mixed communication. I have injured workers who say, oh, my boss is really nice, and she said I could do this and do that. But then the insurance company does something completely different. Or the insurance company knows that they can beat you on a technicality. So they call up the employer and they say, oh, offer this person a job doing A and B. And if they don't do it, we can stop their payments. So the boss is like, oh, hey, do A and B. And the person can't do A and B. And then we get into a whole legal fight. So, your employer and your insurance company are sometimes together, but mostly the insurance company is out for itself. And that's what I like to, really reiterate to people is that if you have a good relationship with your employer, we're not going to burn them by bringing a case, and we're not going to burn them by doing the right thing.
Right. Well, let's talk about another player in the game, the role of an adjuster. Tell me about that. The
adjuster. So the insurance adjuster is the in-house person who runs your case, period. That person has a caseload, and they're told, okay, here's your 100 cases or your 1,000 cases. And what the adjuster does in the back end is they figure out on each and every case what's known as basically a residual or a reserve. They look at a case and they say, we think this case is going to be worth or is going to cost us at most $150,000. And then they do everything in their power to keep it under $150,000. There are adjusters that have a lot of experience and are compassionate human beings, and they will talk to you and they'll try to figure out ways to move things along. There are adjusters who couldn't care less. You're just a number, and they're just going to, do that thing. Oh, nope, you didn't check off the box. Next. And there are a lot of very inexperienced adjusters. Now that I've been practicing for a while, the amount of really, really young adjusters is just personally disturbing. I've known some adjusters for my entire career. So you develop a rapport, being able to talk to people. And like anything else, depending on who they work for, what their incentives are, could really impact your ability to get the benefits you need or don't need.
What is your experience in sort of dissolving these disputes between claimant and the insurance provider in these cases?
The best thing to do is to avoid court if possible. As crazy as that sounds, you really don't want to get there. Early in my career, I was involved in a case, and I remember the judge leaning over and looking at the two lead attorneys and saying, boys, and there's this woman with a big beehive hairdo. She says, boys, don't you think you should resolve this case? And this was after 4 days of testimony, and the last witness was about to be called. So you've gone as far as you could until there was going to be a decision. And the two sides finally resolved it. So if you can resolve it before court, best thing in the world. So if your attorney has a good relationship with the insurance company or with the adjuster, then that gives you the ability, and I have the ability to, reach out to certain people and say, hey, what's going on here? Or go over some people's heads and saying, hey, I hate going over the head, but this might be a case that you want to talk to your, young associate about and try to work things out. Because that's really where 99% of the stuff happens. If we end up at trial, there's always the outliers. There's the judges that are, hanging judges, and the judges let everybody off. So all the judges in between, they're going to listen and they're going to make a decision. So you're rolling the dice, and sometimes you have to roll the dice, but it's usually a lot better to try to resolve these with the insurance companies. Now, some of them, there's one insurance company called the New York State Insurance Fund, and that is the insurance of last resort. It was created by the actual workers' comp statute. It's the largest insurer in New York. And for the most part, they just kind of follow their rules. You get adjusters that think a little more that but they're very bureaucratic, very, check the boxes, go forward type of entity. But other than that, if you have somebody you can speak to, you try to speak to them, try to work it out. And if you can't, then you go to trial.
Brian, do you have any cases that come to mind where you were able to work with the insurance company to get your clients a favorable outcome?
I have quite a few. So, one of my favorites is I had a case where a young woman became a paraplegic. Horrible situation. And over the years, it was just back and forth, and for whatever reason, fighting for everything. And we were able to finally convince an adjuster who I knew and take a crack at it to do what's called a structured settlement. So at some point, I had reached out to the insurance company, the adjuster, and I said, hey, here's what we think the case is worth. And they actually responded to me, are you kidding me? No way we would ever settle for that amount of money. That's what the guy wrote in a letter to me. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I kind of kept pushing it, and I finally found the person I had to speak to. And we ended up settling it for significantly more than what I had asked for, with a lot of additional benefits in this structured settlement. So this individual is now taken care of, and everybody walked away, maybe not happy, but pleased. So that's why it's really important to, try to be able to work some stuff out. And it's a give and take. There are times where I've had adjusters or attorneys call me and say, hey, here's what's going on here. Do you really want to keep fighting it? And I'll be able to sit down with you, my client, and say, look, I trust this person. This is what they said. Here's what the offer is. I think it's decent. Your call. Let's do it. I've had people accept those offers and maybe not be happy, but avoid a real headache. And I've had other people who refuse up and down. And then when the judge rules against them, because the evidence was so stacked against them, they get mad at me, but at least I had told them what was going on.
As we wrap up here, what would you say sets you apart in working with and against workers' compensation insurance providers on behalf of your clients?
Well, as I've always said, we are the choice for all injury and disability legal needs. We've been handling workers' compensation since 1933. And so the law was only not even 20 years old when our firm started. It's the level of the experience that we have so that we can help guide you through the system. We communicate clearly. We try to explain things in understandable terms and clear terms, and really help you reclaim your life after your injury or illness has disabled you from being able to work. And kind of that wealth of knowledge, the empathy that we have, our constant learning, our constant involvement in the system really sets us apart from most other lawyers, because this is not a drive-by type of practice where you're just going to help somebody with a speeding ticket or something like this. This is about your life, and I think that we provide something special. We're real people helping real people. I've had 14 jobs in my life before I became an attorney, so I've experienced it myself. Lots of ups and downs.
No doubt, absolutely. Well, very good, Brian. This has been a true pleasure in getting to know more about you and your firm and what you can do for your clients. I want to thank everyone also out there for tuning in to Work Interrupted with experienced injury and disability attorney Brian Mittman. For more information or to connect with Brian, you can visit thedisabilityguys.com or find him on social media. And be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments. Thanks so much, Brian. This was a true pleasure.
Thank you, Tracy. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.